Welcome, everyone. Thank you for making it. To save time, what I'd like to do is crack on with a proposed structure. So I'll talk about the charity a little bit. I'm Mark, I'm the chair of the charity, have been for the last three and a half years now. And then I'll invite Hilary, who's a recent trustee, to talk about her personal experience about becoming a trustee. And then Lelia, who will talk about the associate trustee role and her experience on there. During our talks, if you're used to Zoom, what I suggest is, okay, I've just got a message. John can't hear anything at the moment. Well, I'll keep going, John. You test your speaker if you can. Someone can chat to John or pass him a message. That would be good.
Yeah, I will.
I will then, after Lelia's talked, what we'll do is some of you will break out, the ones that have expressed interest or come from a finance background. What I propose is for 15 minutes to chat to Frank, Michael and Hilary about what we do around the treasury role, corporate funding and fundraising, etc. So hopefully answer any questions you've got in that area. The rest of us will carry on. We'll talk about the other areas that we look after, other activities, and a chance for you to ask any questions there. So if you get questions as we go along, we'll take them as we go along. Just put your hand up and then I'll try and keep an eye on everyone and invite you in to ask the question. Okay. So background, that CLL Support's been going nearly 20 years now. As you know, it's a patient-led charity. It started out from the CLL Forum. These are the UK CLL specialists across the 4 countries, researchers, scientists, and they thought there was a need for a bridge, a communication bridge and link and partnership with the patient community. There's around 50,000 people with CLL, plus their partners, their friends, their family, and a way of connecting and interacting and communicating latest treatment pathways. So the CLL support arm was formed out of the CLL Forum. It's always been a patient-led charity. All the trustees currently have either got CLL or have a partner with CLL, or sadly a partner who's passed away with CLL. All volunteers. We do have a couple of people that are part-time in there, and we also, where we cannot recruit people to do specialist areas around the filming, the webinars, managing the technology, the website, Health Unlocked Forum, we do bring in third parties, but they are managed by the trustees in there. We work very much as a team. We meet, or we used to meet face-to-face in the conferences. If those of you have been around long enough and enjoyed or taken part in a conference, I do miss them, but I understand at the moment why they're on hold and we've had to move to webinars. But we also have board meetings, trustee board meetings, once every 2 months, just to touch base and check how things are going, develop the conference and webinar plans, and so on in there. The trustees tend to come in and develop based on their experience, their interests or skills, that they will take on an area. And what we want to do this time round, because I think we're quite a robust and structurally sound charity now, we're saying that the people that are interested and do go through the application process and come on board, they'd come on as associates and they'd be buddied, mentored by an existing trustee in the area of interest that they want to help with or take over for a period of up to, say, a year, so they can get their feet under the table before the existing trustee would step down. So there's a smooth transition segue for new trustees coming on. In the past, it hasn't always been that situation. So I think we've got the luxury, and luckily the benefit of the existing trustees are happy to help in that way. And many of them will be stepping back as associate trustees. So they'll still be in the background and available for people to get advice from or seek help for on key issues. That's a little bit about the charity. So I'll pass to Hilary to talk about her personal experience about becoming a trustee. Hilary?
So thank you, Mark. So in 2009, this is just background, I was having my blood tests before my knee replacement operation. and I was diagnosed with CLL. And I've been on CLL watch and wait ever since. So that's quite a long time, but I haven't needed any treatment. I've been really fortunate. And I just went on doing stuff as normal, getting my bloods done every 6 months or so, but that was it. And did all sorts of things. The only thing I couldn't do was go to West Africa because I couldn't get a yellow fever jab. So there was a particular role that I was doing where I just couldn't travel to that part of the world. But I've done all sorts of other stuff while I've had CLL. And then, of course, COVID came along, and suddenly I'm classified as extremely vulnerable, and I'm told to shield. And this is not how I felt I was before I got the email. So this was definitely a change in my perception. I mean, I'd known a bit about vaccines, but I hadn't really realized that. And now we all know that if you've got CLL and you've got a compromised immune system, then we're going to have to be more careful going forward all the time about infections and vaccinations and so on. So during the early months of the pandemic, CLL Support was a fantastic help to me, giving me all the information I needed. I've got an academic background. I love data and knowledge. So I could come along and get fantastic facts from CLL Support from the webinars. And it really made an enormous difference to my lockdown experience. And also along the way then, I actually told people I'd got CLL. So apart from my husband knowing, nobody knew at all. Apart from my sister had it diagnosed before I did. And she didn't want to tell her family, so we didn't tell our family, if you like. It came with the territory. And then during lockdown, I was telling people, and I sort of outed myself. And I felt quite proud of the fact that, you know, I've got a condition, but I'm doing what I can about it and being positive about it. And then there I was on a CLL webinar in July the 2nd, actually, last year, when Marc said, we're looking for some new trustees. And I thought, well, actually, CLL Support's been so fantastic to me over the previous 18 months that I ought to offer to get involved, see if I can help. So I sent Marc an email and we exchanged emails and we met on Zoom, and I became a trustee. It was really very weird though, because I've been coming along to webinars and seeing the CLL Hall of Fame running the webinars. So people like Brian and Marc, you know, you could see, and Gail, you could see them on the screen. And then suddenly there I was talking to them in a Zoom room. So maybe some of you, if you've been watching webinars, will have the same feeling today when you see some of the faces around the screen. Anyway, I became a trustee last summer, and one of the trustees was wanting to step down. He'd been looking after the strategy and finance, strategy and business planning portfolio. So I took over that, and I've been on the board ever since. And I just wanted to share with you 4 things I have found since I became a trustee of CLL. So first of all, they're an incredibly friendly, welcoming, and mutually supportive bunch of trustees. They really are. And as Marc said just now, we aren't necessarily all in the best of health all the time, but we really care about each other. Some of them also do amazing things to join calls. And I joined my very first call. One of the people who's on this call, but I won't identify them, was actually having a drip at the time, but still joined the call. So there you are. This is commitment. And that's the second point, is that all the trustees are absolutely passionate and committed to CLL support, and also to helping anybody that has got CLL and their partners or carers live well with CLL. So this absolute passion for the cause. The third thing is that everybody thinks that everybody else among the trustees does the most amazing things. And the reason why we do this is that Marc has very wisely given us all roles that play to our strengths. So we look at what somebody else is doing and think, I can never do that. But you do your bit and people think, well, actually, that's pretty impressive what they're doing, because I couldn't do that either. So as a board, we've very much all brought our strengths and skills together, and we're doing the things we're best at and that we enjoy doing. And the fourth thing I want to say, I'm a chartered accountant. So before I joined the board, I did my due diligence. I had a route around on the Charity Commission website. I had a look at the information that was up there. And CLL Support is a charitable incorporated organisation. So it's recently moved to that status in the past 5 years or so. So that's good to know. It's got a wealth of policies that the trustees have adopted and are following through. So it's extremely well run. And also it's in a very sound financial position. So, I mean, if you're going to join the board, you want to do your own due diligence, but I just thought I'd share mine with you. So they're my 4 takeaways, if you like, from my experience as a trustee over the past nearly a year now.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any questions or issues at the moment they want to bring up? No? Okay. Lelia, would you like to talk about your experience of joining, like Hilary said, and particularly from the associate trustee role?
Yeah, sure, Mark. Hi, everybody. Just to give a bit of my background, it starts at a very similar time to Hilary in 2009 when I was diagnosed with CLL, but I've had a very different course to Hilary, because within a year I was getting FCR, and then 4 years later I went into a study called Clarity when I relapsed, and then I retired in 2017, having worked in clinical trials and sort of clinical research. I retired and crossed over to the dark side. I became a patient representative with a trial team doing CLL trials. I joined Pete Hillman and the Flair team in Leeds as their patient representative. And for a couple of years, carried on doing that. And then in 2020, again during the pandemic, I was following a CLL Support webinar, and Marc actually made a call for volunteers, not specifically for trustees, but for volunteers who might help in some way. And I was feeling that my role as a patient representative for CLL, to be honest, at that time, I didn't know anyone else with CLL. And I didn't feel I could give a very strong voice to the the community of people with CLL, because I didn't know enough about it. I'd been to a couple of conferences, I joined the webinars, but I didn't personally know anyone else with it, because it's not something you tend, probably I do know people, but it's not what you talk about. And again, you know, the pandemic's blown all our private lives in terms of CLL. Now everybody knows that I've got it. So I stepped forward, I put my hand up to volunteer, and then Marc suggested that I join as an associate trustee. And actually the role that I feel I have doesn't quite fit the ones that Marc, there's several ways of being an associate trustee. As Marc said, it could be a trustee standing down a little bit, or somebody working their way into a full trustee role. I feel that I'm happy as an associate trustee. There's a ground in the middle where it works really well for me. So I approached CLL already doing the role as a PPI representative, which I don't think at that time that CLL Support had been involved particularly in research. They might have been consulted a little bit, but they didn't have an actual rolling up their sleeves, hands-on role. So I felt very welcomed in as somebody who is already doing that. And I've gained a huge amount out of being an associate trustee, because I feel that I can much more confidently represent the experiences and the opinions of the CLL community, because CLL Support's allowed me to keep my ear to the ground in a much more proactive way. So I found it, and in terms of what you do within the charity, it allows you a lot. Being an associate trustee, I think, gives you a lot more flexibility, because I don't have direct responsibility for anything really to do with the day-to-day running of the charity. I try and attend as many of the meetings as I can, because I feel I do my job much better if I am listening to what's going on within the community. And like Hilary, I felt very welcomed, having joined during the pandemic, so largely not having met anyone face to face. It's felt very welcoming, and actually a very welcome interaction, because at one point I said to my husband, the only new people I'm meeting are those with CLL. So that's been a very positive experience. And I would agree with pretty much everything that Hilary said. And all I guess I might add personally is that I've really enjoyed feeling part of the CLL community, and that CLL Support has got a very positive can-do sort of attitude amongst the trustees, and also a lot of humour. I think a lot of the work gets done and a lot of the discussions happen sort of peppered with fun and humour, which is particularly welcome. And it's, yeah, and I now feel that I've made a lot of friends within the CLL community, which is very nice.
Thank you, Lelia. Yeah, I should have clarified that the reason we created the associate trustees is there are people in the community, there are specialists out there that can't give a lot of time maybe to become a full-time trustee and on the board and attending the board meetings and attending the conferences. But people like Lelia, who've got invaluable expertise and experience in a particular area, become associate trustees and focus their expertise in a particular area. So with Lelia, obviously on the trial side, it's a very key area, and that part, the role of the patient representative in those trials is very key and does a cracking job there. We had Anthea. Anthea is a trustee now. She started off as an associate trustee. She was a GP. She was running another charity. She couldn't give that amount of time, but we wanted someone, I wanted someone with a GP perspective and experience to help us understand their world and how we can best support them. So she came in as associate trustee for a year or 18 months, I think it was. And then now she's got the time, she put forward to become a full trustee, and now she's a full trustee and helping in other areas as well. So I think it's a very good, I liken it to the motorway. You know, you join the road coming into the motorway to get up to speed. And I think it's one of the roles the associate trustee position can have. So it's for consideration for everyone in there. So hopefully you've got a bit of a perspective on that. I'm going to ask Hilary in a moment to then launch the breakout room that Frank, who's our treasurer, on there, and Michael, who helps us on the corporate funding side, with Nora. And there's 2 or 3 of you that have got a background in finance. I think it'd be worth you talking as a group and exploring and sharing and answering any questions. So Hilary, if you want to go off, and then we'll carry on the conversation around the other areas. Don't worry, you won't be missing anything. It's all being recorded. You can see everything later as well. Okay. Okay, I think they've all got. Hilary, are you joining that room, or are you staying?
Yeah, I need to find out how to go. I didn't have my name to choose, so I just need to sort that out.
No worries. Okay, so what I thought we had just talked in general, and maybe I'll get people like Brian and Nora to talk about their areas in more detail. So Brian, who's been longer, I think, as a trustee than I have, he does the excellent work. I'm sure you'll agree with me with the newsletters, briefings that go out to you. And Nora does a lot of work on the under 60s group in particular there, but does work in other areas as well. So the key areas I'd say for the charity are the e-newsletters that go out, that are much valued. The forum, if you're part of it, the Health Unlocked forum, which it staggers me. I think we're nearly 20,000, Brian, on there worldwide. We're almost hoisted on our own success because it is worldwide. It takes a lot of administration and management from the team of, again, volunteers, unpaid helpers to help manage that. And we've got the wonderful under 60s group. I think it's over 100 strong, Nora, now. And the webinars. We hope to go back to conferences. We're going to do a hybrid, hopefully in the autumn, so people can go to it, but they can also join online. It will be streamed for those who don't feel confident enough to travel and be face-to-face in a conference. Brian, would you like to talk a little bit about the newsletter and what's involved and how you approach that?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Just to recap, my main responsibility is communications, comms, basically, and that involves everything that we put out into the world. The key items, as Mark has said, is newsletter, which is currently produced every month. Previously, before COVID, it was every 2 months, which makes life much easier if you have time to gather everything together over 2 months. How long we'll carry on for now, COVID seems to be going down with monthly newsletters. We'll have to wait and see, but there's one coming out in the next few days. And I thought what I do on the newsletter, it might be interesting if I send anyone who is interested in communications. I think Laura has suggested she might be interested. If I send you the newsletter, if you haven't seen them, you get an idea of what's involved. It does take a while, but we've now got a format which makes life a little easier. Most of the time it's involved in doing the research, putting things in there that we hope are interesting, informative, and accurate, which is the three key things really. Apart from the newsletter, we have the website. We rebuilt the website fundamentally about 4 or 5 years ago now, and it radically changed everything. My responsibility there is to keep it up to date. I can go on the website and do the jiggly bits myself and change it, but I don't. We have an expert to do that. So I simply give instructions and write out what we need, whether it's the latest drugs that are available, with latest news on COVID or whatever, and we try and keep it as up to date as possible, because that's really essential. We have a very high throughput on the website. Several thousand people log on over a week, which means that it's well resourced and people seem to enjoy it. Finally, well, not quite finally, but the other one is the forum, which Marc has said is the International Forum, Health Unlocked. We set that up. One of our ex-trustees worked very hard to set that up about, well, it must be getting over 8 years now. And it's amazingly difficult to get people to understand what it's about in the early days. So I think in the first week we had one person posting on there. This week we have 4,500 people posting on there or logging on. There are 19,800 members of the forum at the moment, which means that we have quite a reach. It is an international forum, as Marc has said. Many of the members are in the States, and the 4 administrators now, we just appointed an administrator, have to keep an eye on what is said, because I think everybody understands social media can get a little fractious at times, and we will not stand for that. We will not stand for people coming on with fake cures, snake oil cures, and so on. And we have to keep an eye on it and get rid of them quickly. Sometimes it's quite busy for the administrators. For the last 3 or 4 weeks, for reasons that I don't understand, it's been extremely quiet. We've had no people trolling, had no people putting snake oil remedies on there or being aggressive. So it's been a quiet few weeks. Long may it last. Finally, the other things that go out. For webinars, we have slides, and they have to be in the correct format to make sure the logo looks okay and it's professional. One of the key things I'm really, really keen to, and it does perhaps get a bit picky sometimes, is that we maintain a highly professional front so that people have confidence in us, essentially. That we're a professional organization and we know what we're doing. I think it really is important to have the logos looking correctly, the type looking correctly, to make it look professional. So I think that summarizes it all. There's quite a lot of work involved. Basically, you can do as much or as little as you like. It does tend to grow once you get into it. And certainly from the newsletter, you keep thinking, oh, that's a good article, let's refer to that. Or you look at the 2 American sites, which are extremely well resourced. They're for-profit sites, but they do have excellent articles, excellent videos on there, and we're allowed to find them and transmit them over here. So that's another element of it. So I hope that covers everything. I'll be very happy to answer any questions, but that's me done, I think.
Any questions for Brian? Okay. I think it's called plagiarizing with pride, Brian, isn't it? I used to call it that anyway. If you take from another site, as long as they know and that we give credence, which I know you do to them.
Yeah, but we understand we can't do everything. we're limited in the time that we can devote. We don't have a professional team doing this sort of thing. Leukemia Care, for example, that's just a charity. We refer to them a lot. They have 14 people doing the website. They have another 8 doing their newsletters. So, we can't compete with that. So they do a lot of research and we piggyback on it, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah. John's asked a question via the chat boxes. How many hours per week does it take, the newsletter?
It's a bit like Topsy, it can grow. It really comes down to how much time you want to spend. It's if I give you the current one, which is just about to be published, it's going through checking now. How many hours? Over the last month, because as soon as one's published, I start on the next one and I build it step by step. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 hours a week to do the research and to edit it and bring it into some sort of format. It gets a little more hectic towards the publication time, but basically it's a step-by-step process. And we have a template which we can use and fit in various parts quite easily. And so if I said 2 or 3 hours a week, you could spend double that if you wanted to, but I don't think it would make a great deal of difference. The website may be a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours there as well, just doing the research to make sure that we have everything in line and accurate, and we have all the latest information on there. So some weeks, nothing will happen on the website. And then somebody will develop a new drug or release a new drug or a new treatment will be approved, and then we stick it on the website as soon as we can.
Thank you, Brian. Nora, do you want to tell us a little bit about the under 60s group?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Nora, and I moderate and run the under 60 group. It's a WhatsApp group, and it was formed, I guess, basically when I became a trustee in the spring of 2019. One young fellow who is now an associate trustee, he said, let's have a conference on a Saturday so that people with 9-to-5 jobs can attend. And that was a great success. There were 10 of us in the kids' table at the back of the room in Bournemouth. And the WhatsApp group was born from that. And it now is 140 people, which is a lot for a WhatsApp group. But it, yeah, it's good fun. It's just great. We've had to set some boundaries and rules and things to make sure that, like on Health Unlocked, we don't have anything aggressive or any inappropriate. We keep religion and politics out, but that's not too terribly time consuming. People in the group look after each other, so it's I just make sure everyone's behaving and offer whatever I can when I can, but there are many things that I can't necessarily help on. I shadow Michael with the pharma fundraising and do my bit with the pharmacies when they're looking for a patient voice. They have a lot of panel discussions and activities, surveys where they are looking to see what we think about things. And sometimes you just feel like it's that they're ticking a box, but sometimes it's good that they listen to us. And their focus now, as everywhere, is a patient-centered time with your doctor, shared decision making. So that's very interesting to be a part of, because you want to balance. You don't want the doctor to take over everything, but you don't necessarily want everything on the patient to decide. So it's very interesting. That's good. And I help Brian occasionally with proofreading, and I help Lewis a bit with getting ready for webinars, pressing buttons if he's not well. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, maybe, or something, master of none.
You are a master, Nora.
So there you go.
Sean, did you have a question you wanted to raise?
I'm just sending it to you now, but I'll ask you instead.
Yeah, that's better.
I was just interested, Mark, in your views about what the key issues are facing the charity over the next couple of years.
Good question, Sean. I'll give you the fiver afterwards for asking that. I'd say it's making sure this is a personal view, Sean. I'm not saying this is exactly right, because we talk as a bunch of trustees. I'd say because of the pandemic, it's making sure we continue to be patient-led. So with the conferences, if you have been to the conferences, it was a standard format, but it was a successful format. So we would have an expert speaker, we would have a patient giving their journey, and we'd have breakout groups. So you'd be sitting on tables and having discussions with the members, the partners of the patients as well. So we keep close to what the issues are of the day, of that particular time, to make sure it drives our work. And that's why I've introduced and just rolled out, hopefully you took part in the survey. So we'll analyze the results and use that. So being patient-led and keeping it close to us, that we want to do what the patients, what the community want to do. That's one, Sean. Two, it's making sure we get bang for bucks. We are a small charity, as Brian said. We're a small group, we're a volunteer group, we've got lots of expertise, but we can't compete on the same level as Blood Cancer UK or Leukemia UK. So for the past 2 or 3 years, I've made sure we're linked in. So I go to a CEO's meeting with Blood Cancer UK, Lymphoma Action, Leukemia UK, and others on there, and make sure we build the partnerships and work with them on the areas where we can leverage their expertise on things like the buddy system. So people who are newly diagnosed and want to talk to someone with CLL, as Lelia was saying, and I was in the same boat. I remember when I was diagnosed, I had lots of sympathy from a lot of people, but it's not empathy. It's not people who have CLL. You know, even my wife and my kids, etc. I wanted to talk to people who were in the same position. So the buddy system is a great way of doing that. The conferences was a great way of doing that. We've got the helpline as well. So I think making sure we maintain and leverage and work and partner with the bigger charities, but on the basis of the needs of the community is key. The other thing with things like the pandemic and the new treatments is make sure we keep the pressure on. I'm a bit of a cynical bugger, as the other trustees will tell you. I keep the pressure on with the pharmacies, because most of them are very good. But because I came from business, I think, well, they're discovering these new drugs that don't cure CLL, they manage CLL. Well, from a profitable business point of view, that's nirvana. So it's keeping the pressure on to research and find a cure for CLL, so we don't have to take FCR or ibrutinib or venetoclax longer term. And I think it will happen, but we just make sure we work closely with them. So there's 5 key farmers in those areas in the UK that give CLL treatments. And I have regular meetings with them, and people like Nora and Michael are involved. And the value we bring to them is we do podcasts, we get involved in their trials. We have a champions group, so they get involved on the trials and the focus groups and development of new treatments, new apps, technology apps, etc. And that's the value we can bring for a win-win with them. So it's keeping the pedal to the metal with the researchers, the scientists, the farmers, making sure we deliver what you, as part of this club, this membership, want, and we leverage other people in the field to make sure we get the best bang for bucks for you guys. Does that answer your question, Sean?
It's very, very helpful. Thank you very much.
So Mark, you'll see we've come back to join you. So we've had a really good briefing on matters financial. So we've come back to hear about the rest of the world.
Okay. Well, I've got a grovelling apology. I realised Will was still in the group here, and with his background in finance, I should have said, but we can catch up later on that, Will.
No, Mark, I'm a tax specialist, not an accountant. I take great delight in telling people that.
Oh, right.
It's not me. It's
As somebody that knows these things, I spotted that you were ATT, not AAT. So
I'm sure you've got skills and experience, because I can't manage the household budget. So whoever on the finance side, it's all good. Angela, you've got 2 questions to ask.
Yes, thank you. The first one, the first one, I don't want to come across as negative. I think it's really important to understand. what do you think is the biggest disappointment that you have, or sort of a wish that hasn't been fulfilled for the charity?
The biggest disappointment, I'll go first. I'll ask the other trustees because they'll have their own perspectives. For me, it's working with some of the links in the other charities, and I understand why. They're paid. They've got paid jobs in there, so some of them are quite competitive. Whereas, from my point of view, I'm retired now. I've got no interest in getting promoted or whatever. I just want to do the best for us in there, the other trustees. Most of them are very good, but you do get the occasional one that is out for their own charity or their own role.
Yeah.
Others, Brian or Nora, Lelia, Hilary?
But my very selfish biggest disappointment is that I haven't yet met in person any of the other trustees. That's about to change on the 20th of June, so that's my disappointment will be sorted.
That might be regarded as a small mercy in some quarters as well. I couldn't possibly comment. I think one disappointment is that we probably feel we could do so much more, but frankly, you know, we're already working at sort of full pelt, and I think you have to come to terms with the fact you can only do so much for a small charity, and we are in the field of these sort of organisations a small player, but we hit way above our weight, I think.
Thank you.
Except Michael, I didn't hear, did you have a disappointment?
Yeah, there's no cure.
Yeah, right. No cure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Shall I ask my second question?
Yes, please.
You sort of touched on it, but my sense is, and it is only a sense from, you know, just being a user, is that there's an opportunity to do more political lobbying and also to get a higher profile in the mainstream media. Is that something that the trustees are looking to do, or has that been discussed and not seen as a priority?
No, it is discussed, Angela, and in fact, we do. I was just approached by the Times at the just before the weekend to comment on an article. I've been on Sky News, we've been on Radio 4 between us. So we do, in fact, some of the other cancer charities grudgingly and admiringly saying we punch above our weight on there. The difficulty is, Angela, and if anyone's to blame, it's me. I have to make a judgment call between lobbying and being politically biased in there. And we're a charity. I've got my own political views. I know what I'd like to do, but representing a charity, we've got to be very careful to balance the line between lobbying for the best treatments possible in there and overstepping it and becoming more political, if you see what I mean, Angela. I don't think there's an answer, and we discuss it all the time at trustee meetings and at conferences. And some members are more disappointed than others that we don't do more. But also, as Frank says, it's the resource that's available. So we do a lot of lobbying collectively through the Blood Cancer Alliance or Cancer 52, who have got people, professional people, political specialists in there to do that lobbying.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think there's another. Okay, thank you, John. John says it's good not to be commercial. Any other questions or things people want to know more about or want to explore?
Yeah. Jackie. Yeah.
Yeah, is it not my, yeah? I was trying to find the raise hand thing on my iPad, but
don't worry, the analog way of doing it is good as well, Jackie.
Right, that's good. It has occurred to me more than once that I don't know if ethnic minorities are kind of represented and involved in the charity at all. I haven't met through the webinars or any other avenue anybody who's not white British, apart from obviously on the Health Unlocked forum, where you obviously have people from all over the world on there. But it's just a thought really, and a sort of a question. Is that something that it needs to be looked at in some way, or is it that it's not a condition, a disease that affects people who are of different races?
It's a mix, Jackie. It's a very good point, and one that we've been working on, particularly with Blood Cancer Alliance and Cancer 52 as groups of charities. We've got 2 little projects going on trying to dig into this a bit more. Personally, we did some work about 2 years ago with some other trustees and I, getting the data, trying to find out exactly how many people across the UK have been diagnosed with CLL. And through Public Health England and its comparators in the other home countries, we got the numbers of around 50,000. From the data that they collected at that point, and this is over, I think it was 2009 to 2018, so a 10-year period, it's less than 1% are Afro-Caribbean, and maybe 3% Asian and other ethnic minorities in there that are reported. It does tend to be a Western, as they say, disease, and we do constantly ask, if there's people out there. We have had a couple of members talk that have come from an ethnic minority background, and they've talked on conferences or webinars. But yeah, if you know anyone that wants to join, because we do try and get a mix of ages, and obviously we've got the gender range, and we've got people from Northern Ireland and so on as trustees. But I'm sure we could do a bit more, but it's reaching out to those people. But if you've got any ideas, Jackie, I'd be more than welcome. If you fancy coming on board and working on that area, that would be brilliant as well, Jackie.
Okay. There is some diversity in the under 60s group. Yeah.
Right. But it's interesting, you said just 1%. Was it Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1% according to the public health records. The caveat I'd put on that, Jackie, as I dig in further, there's a lot of people that won't put what they are in there. And in the research work we're doing, we're working with other charities that are more ethnic minority based, and they're saying often it's people from an ethnic minority that don't want to say they're an ethnic minority in there. So I take the figures we've got with a pinch of salt, and we are working with NHS Digital, NHS Direct, so to try and strengthen and refine their survey. So when people register for a disease or illness, whatever, we try and get the coding right in there. But there's a long way to go.
Yes. Interesting.
Angela?
It's just I think the correct term now isn't ethnic minority. It should be BAME, just in terms of how you refer to it, because ethnic minority in itself is excluding rather than inclusive. Just
I've been told off for using BAME by some minorities as well.
Yeah, but I know
I'm happy to be guided on there. In fact, what I've said on the 2 pilots, I said, look, I'm white, middle class, middle aged, well educated. I'm not sure I should be the representative from CLL on there, but it's trying to find someone from the BAME plus background on there.
Yeah. I only mention it because I chaired a diversity organisation, so it's close to my heart. So I thank Jackie for raising it.
It feels like that's an area that you guys could help us on.
Clearly there are different messages here about BAME, etc. I've been, worked with the Citizens Advice for a long time, and one of our national audit points locally, or in Winchester at least, where I was the chairman, was around this very issue. But at the end of the day, we had to reflect the population that we were trying to serve. So we were generally taken to task, why didn't we have 15% from mixed backgrounds, when in Winchester it accounted for 0.5% of the population. So you couldn't find anybody to play that role. So it was really really a difficult issue. And I must admit, personally, maybe you've picked me up on this. I never answer that question unless I think it's relevant. I mean, I think in the CLL case, I would just say I'm other because I'm part of the CLL support area because I've got CLL, not for any other reason.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's
interesting to know that it affects a particular proportion of the population to such a degree.
It's interesting. It's for my sins, I'm invited to sit on the CLL Forum Executive Committee, and it's so 2 or 3 times a year I'm on these calls that last all day that I maybe understand 10% of what they're talking about. But it often comes up, and they're reflecting that it is starting to climb, the amount of people diagnosed from a BAME or whatever background, and then particularly around the world. And they're putting it down to that the medical capabilities in some of the third world countries are getting more advanced, and they're picking up CLL that way.
Yeah.
So this old myth, or might be a myth, that it's predominantly Western white, could be driven by the fact it's the level of competence and capability of the hospital systems there. Will, you've got your hand up?
Yeah, I've just Googled CLL India, and it's I've got my sound on, yeah. And I've got CLL is not as common as other types of leukemia in India. The incidence rate of CLL in India is 0.41 per 100,000, 10 times lower than that in the United States. Just thought that might be helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Will. Yeah. But I think the challenge for charities and what we're focusing on in these sorts of areas is making sure we can get the data available and as accurate as possible to have these discussions about it. And it's very difficult. Yeah, when I came on as chair and went on the executive forum, the first question I asked is, how many people across the UK have CLL? And they looked at me blankly. They don't know, because we talk about the NHS, but it's actually quite tribal. It's every region has its own numbers, and we found it extremely difficult. In fact, they were impressed that I managed to get the data, much as it is, for the UK, and they've been using that, but they find it very difficult to get a UK-wide picture.
Yeah, we'd be surprised if the pharma companies didn't have it. I mean, part of my career I spent in drug development, from compound discovery through to trials, and one of our units was I was always a little bit embarrassed explaining this to my friends and family, that we had an economic unit that advised pharma companies on the economics of actually spending $1 billion on a drug. And one of the primary considerations in there, of course, is how many people are suffering with the condition, how old they are, how long they might last, which countries they're in, they've got the money to fund it. So given the amount of development that there has been, thank goodness, in the CLL world, I'd be very surprised if there wasn't a world of data, but maybe it's proprietary data in the pharma companies.
Yeah, I think you're right, Philip. And of course, they're private companies. They've got to make a hard decision on there often. But and thank you. Was it Angela just put up this LGBTQ+? I was picked up on one of the ethnic groups' work, so that's the term I know I should be using. But yeah, it's a challenge, and we've got good relationships with the big five. It's AstraZeneca and Janssen's and Beijing and so on in there that work in the CLL. But at the end of the day, they're there to make a profit, and it's a significant investment they're making in there. But I just try and nudge them and tickle their feet now and then, saying, and what about a cure, as Michael said.
Mark, I think Sylvia might have just joined the call.
Oh, hi, Sylvia. Welcome. Can't see you. You're on mute. Can you hear us? Not sure.
Yes. Yes, you never want to be cynical, but you could imagine it's not in the interest of some drug companies to develop cures.
And that's what I was alluding to earlier, Philip. As I said, I'm a bit of a cynical monkey from 40 years in business. Hi, Sylvia. Welcome.
Sorry, I'm late.
No worries. It's all being recorded, so I'll share the link on the recording later so you can catch up. We've just been talking in general about the organisation, the roles, background. We've had a breakout group with some of the people with more of a finance background having a discussion. Do you have any questions that you would like to ask us, Sylvia?
No, I'll wait and watch the recording, see what I've missed, and then
Okay, no worries.
I might answer some questions.
No worries. Mike, you've got a question?
No, it's just an apology. I need to leave. I have other things to get to. So I need to leave now. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you for making the time.
And hope we will meet again.
Sure, Mike.
Cheers, Mike.
Bye.
Mike's been excellent with Nora on the corporate side and getting the funding. So we are extremely stable financially on there, almost to a challenge, as Hilary would tell you on there. The biggest cost, I think, in the past has been the conferences being run. But of course, moving to webinar, you can get more people at a cheaper rate, but it's not the same bandwidth in my mind. It's nice to have the interaction face to face. It's nice to have the table groups and conversations, having chats over lunch. Especially as a trustee, you get to know more about the issues, the concerns, the needs of the people. John's asking, what are the major costs now, conferences aside? Well, 3 or 4 years ago, there was a big investment thanks to a will, an amount of money we got on a will was the website development. Frank, what would you say are the major costs now? Obviously, we've got a bit with the part-time work.
Yeah. The conferences certainly were the main cost, because of course those events are put on entirely free to members. So it is a big item, but that obviously has been on hold recently, but over the terms of pandemic. But yes, in the last 2 years we have had a complete revamp of the website. Those things don't come cheap. But also we of course have been focusing now on the Support Act. That was well, we put a toe in the water there with a not insubstantial investment, but there is an awful lot more we can spend in that area. And that is something I think we will be looking at in the next 12, 18 months. Unfortunately, Mike's just disappeared now, because that was one of his he has championed that cause. There's a lot more we can do there. And then when conferences resume, yes, we will be funding them as well as we can.
Yeah, I think John sent me an email earlier on about, maybe should we have some branded goods and products for members. And I know we've talked about this over the years. Certainly at conferences we'd give a pack out, and I think just before the pandemic we decided to move to, rather than a bag, we were going to give a sort of executive file with a brief that people would have and a pen and so on, giving the contacts, best how-to guides and all that sort of stuff. So hopefully we will reintroduce that and invest it. And we do for people who are fundraising, for people who are doing running and cycling. John Greensmith, who unfortunately can't make the call, he's just the cycle ride around London. I'm in awe of what he does on there, but we give vests and things like that out with the CLL logo. And maybe it's an area longer term we might explore about what we can do on branded materials. Certainly during the pandemic, and now I took it on myself. I went through Vistaprint and got 2 or 3 masks printed up with the CLL logo on, and I still use them when I go outside. And I've had 2 or 3 people over the last 3 months come up and ask about the organization, and they've got someone with CLL. And it also helps with the looks I get in the supermarket saying, you know, why are you still wearing a mask? At least they can see something on there to say, and hopefully they make the connection as to why I'm still wearing a mask. So it might be an area we look at longer term.
Angela raised a good question here. Do we have a dedicated social media role? I think it's Brian who is the social media person. Although with Liz, we've hired someone to do that. Maybe Brian can speak a bit more on that.
Yeah, we have a YouTube channel and a Facebook channel, and the channel that Nora handles. Those are the key areas. So all webinars appear on YouTube and or Facebook, and the recordings go on there as well afterwards. There's a lot more we can do, but the difficulty has been over recent years that the average age of someone diagnosed with CLL is around 70 or 72, and many of them are unfamiliar or simply don't want to use social media channels at all. So we have to be very careful, but they are getting some activity now. It's taken some time, but activity is starting to increase.
Yeah, we have a Twitter where we tweet, and we could probably do more there or something. And LinkedIn, we have a presence there. And I know Lewis does a lot with LinkedIn.
Yeah.
He follows a lot of people. I'm starting to do Twitter, but I've often thought, gosh, yeah, we need someone to do some tweeting, do some more tweeting or something.
I'm sure we could do more in that area. I think when I talked to Liz last, she suspects it's not so much the person as Brian says, the average person with CLL is more mature, but it's often their family and children that might use the links more. So I think it's an area, again, if we've got the resource and we've got people with interest to become trustees or associate trustees to explore that area, that would be great.
Yeah.
Angela?
I think I might have a speciality in that role. So that's why I asked the question. So, I understand about, the average age and maybe the sort of the patient-led part of the organisation won't use social media all that much. But in terms of people we need to connect with and influencing and advocacy and fundraising, it's probably your best and cheapest channel. So if I was successful, I would like to volunteer to help with that.
Excellent. Music to my ears, because I mean, some of the other trustees talk to me about Twitter and Instagram, etc. And I have to get my grandkids to come and show me how to use even Facebook and things like that. So, that'd be great, Angela.
Well, I have 61,000 Twitter followers, so more than most large organisations. So I can definitely, help in that way.
Because from a fundraising point of view, I'd like to. We do get a lot of help from the 5 big farmers, which is fine, but I'd like to balance it a bit more with fundraising and other trusts, etc., and individual donations. So that would be good. Thanks, Angela. Anything? It's just coming up to 2 o'clock. So, William.
Yes, Mark, thank you. And I've obviously found the last hour extremely helpful, and thank you very much for facilitating it. How would you like us to go ahead? I mean, I'm not sure, reviewing the last 70 years of my life, what I necessarily bring, but are you asking for sort of CVs or something like that you can you can perhaps find something there that might be of use to you?
Well, it's both ways, William. So thanks for making the point. I was just coming on to, so the next steps are, and it sounds like many of you are interested in taking forward, let me know. We'll send you the application pack. And it doesn't have to be a world-class CV, but if you can put down, especially after this conversation, where you think you could add value, even if it's not an area you've got expertise in. I mean, as I say, I left school with 1 O-level and became a telephone engineer, and my kit on the telephone stuff I used to work on is in a museum now. So, but I came forward, I learned, I developed, and other people helped me into the role. So don't worry, if there's an area, it doesn't have to be an area of expertise. If it's an area of interest, that's great from the conversations you've had with us and in the breakout group. So if you're interested, just bung me the email. I'll send you by return the pack, fill it in. We'll set up interviews and chats with each of you individually and take it from there. Does that make sense to everyone? Brilliant. Well, it's been ever so nice. And it's always, when we get to this cycle of who are the next set of members to come up, we always get worried, are people going to come up? And I'm enthused every time that we get another bunch of fresh faces, fresh ideas coming up. So thank you for making the time. Thank you for volunteering. Frank?
Yes, Mark. I wanted to just jump in before you did finish, because I think we've covered sort of various areas in our in the last hour or so, and with people sort of dipping their toe in the water. But what I wanted to say is that I mean, I'll be looking to step down at the end of next year. So looking back over what I've got out of working with the with CLL Support, I mean, in my life, professional life, I dealt with any number of charities, but and I got involved with CLL purely with my finance background. But what I can say is that I think this is a unique charity insofar as all the trustees are affected in some way by this disease. So it makes us somewhat unique because we, if I can make such a claim, we know what our members want because we've suffered ourselves, we've seen what's needed, we've got first-hand knowledge of what's needed. And so that makes us unique. And the fact that we all work our socks off to deliver that, again, is driven by the fact we know there is the need out there for the services that we provide. And the ultimate benefit, I think, to the trustees, which has been tempered somewhat because of circumstances over the last 2 years, is the thanks that we get from members, particularly at conferences. They are so grateful when people come up to you sort of during the day and keep saying what a good job we're doing, how they appreciate it. That makes it all worthwhile.
Thank you, Frank. Yes, I can't speak highly enough of the team around me. It feels more like a group of friends than trustees. So yeah, long may it continue. If there are no further questions, I look forward, fingers crossed, to your emails. I will put the recording online for Sylvia and others that couldn't make it, and we've set up some separate calls as well. But I hope to see most of you sometime in the none too distant future taking CLL support forward to the next level. Thank you, John, for your comments. Thanks everyone for your input. See you again.